substance one more time. I can either choose to use materials or smart materials, but when I first import my model by choosing new and selecting the FBX, I want to go to the texture set settings and choose big mesh maps. And I'm going to use a 2K texture with default settings. I don't have a high res mesh for my low poly character. So I will hit bake. Make sure that I don't get any weirdness. Actually, this button down the middle is a bit concerning, but it looks like it worked itself out. Baking the mesh maps allows you to take advantage of smart materials. So I have a skin smart material, which is serviceable, but it is a little bit bumpy. If I notice that there are layers that maybe I want to change, right, I need to open up the smart material by clicking the folder and looking for that layer by hiding and showing layers like I would in Photoshop. So the surface skin layer is the one causing all these crazy bumps. I can just click on that to edit the layer, and the blend options are also here. So what I might want to do is check if I can change the scale. Okay, the scale's not living there. It looks like it is in possibly this height map, which is dragging things up and down. Okay, so that looks better. Now, I don't want to just necessarily leave that, although for my base layer it's fine. What I want to do is start to layer more materials onto this character, right? Test them out. So say I've got a silver armor material here. I can drag that onto my layer section and see what it looks like on everything. But to isolate which objects become metal, I click on this little mask button and choose add a black mask. Then I repaint that mask in either by using the brush tool up here. I can work on the mesh or on the UVs. But I find that it's more accurate when I've gone through the trouble of UV unwrapping to use the UV chunk fill option, which will allow me to grab this whole piece that I've unwrapped. Gotta get the insides as well. Oh, that's the face. Where's the inside? So if I can't find it in the UVs, I can always select it here. Okay, it's a pretty nice material for the metal on the character. Then if I have other areas, right, that I want more control or that I haven't necessarily separated, either on the map here or on the cuts on the model, right, I might need to go into polygon fill to get some of those areas, like maybe the knees here. I wanted to have some armor, so I can just block that area out. Right, I know I also wanted to have some chest armor on this character, so I can select some polys up here, see if it's going to work. He also had some armbands, so I can choose those sections. Again, either working on the UVs or on the character model is the great part of working with substance, right? Then I want to continue to add materials. Like the next thing I might want is medieval leather, but I'm also going to add a mask. But before I do that, I just want to find out what's causing these strange bumps. So I'll go in here, right, and see if I want this layer active or if I maybe just need some scaling, right, to match the scale of materials on my character, right? Typically, we don't want to be able to see the repeating pattern, though. Of course, when it's across the whole character like this, that's going to happen anyway. So again, I need to mask out this material and then paint it back on, either by using the brush, right? And the nice thing about this is that even if I'm, say, painting some under leather for this chest piece and I decide that the outline is wrong, right, I can just change the order of layers, and that way the medieval leather will always be behind the silver armor that it is called up here. So that also allows me to test some ideas, right, and be like, well, okay, maybe the base of his shoulder pads was also leather. Oops. So I can fill in those spots. Interesting. I don't remember doing his back, but let's check where that came from. So if I want to, add, that's the default white. If I want to subtract, I can go to 0 and remove the armor from certain places. I don't even know where that is. Other materials that I've got on here that I know that I want include a fur that is a regular material. So it works the same way though. If I drag it to timeline, I get Chewbacca in this case. Add a black mask, and then go in with the paintbrush or with the polygon fill, right, and choose areas here if I want to show them. Maybe his, I don't know, underwear here is made out of furs. So we cover him up, and then if I want to undo any of that, I can turn the dial back to 0. And then anywhere that I have in between sort of areas, that's when I might want the brush, and I can just brush between those areas. It looks like my opacity is turned down, maybe, or my spacing. I have a low hardness, so I can control how soft the edges are here. Right, and I can also hold Control and right click and then move the mouse back and forth to change the size of this brush. Also, like before, I can also change the color. If I want to swap to erase, I go to 0. Definitely getting some strange interference. I hope I don't have overlap going on over here somewhere. Alright, gotta take care of the bottom. You're the only one usually who has to deal with this view, but somebody's got to do it. It's usually the character modeler, right? So maybe it's gonna work, but usually you don't want to push it too far, right? That's a little bit much. So I was having him fight pretty nude earlier, but I can find a nice middle ground, get him some Hanes, some dad underwear. And again, if this is interfering with something else, say I wanted to have a silver belt buckle for the armor, say, right? Again, I need to just think about where that material is in the layer stack, and I can raise or lower that material, right? Also keep an eye on for where something's getting pushed downwards, where maybe you want it to be raised up, right? So in this case, even though the fur, right, appears to be sort of slightly raised, have a slight bump against the skin, the metal is actually having the opposite effect. It seems to be pushing inwards, right, which is not what we want usually. This also requires sometimes a little bit of inspection into what's going on in the smart material, right? Since we didn't make the smart material, we need to check on some of these aspects. So, for instance, the height is one. And these are all of the different maps that this particular material has, right? It has a color, a diffuse, a metallic or a specular, roughness, also known as a mask or a metallic mask. Areas that are not metallic, right, are rough. Normal map, which is controlling the fine details like scratches, and then a height map, which is more about the edges of the object. So right now, I can see the height down here. It says that it's set to 0. So what I can do is mess with this number, right, and then that you can see that's actually raising the appearance of the metal outwards rather than pushing it inwards, which is usually the effect that I want, but I do need to keep an eye on, say, areas that are completely metal and other transition areas like between the chest and the leather underneath, right? And on the arms here, sometimes what looks good in one area will be too strong, right, for another area. So much like when you use Photoshop and you're moving sliders around for your layer blending options, right? Generally, you want to dial it up to where it looks good, but then dial it back down until you don't really notice that it's there anymore, right, before you hit 0. So somewhere usually in between is going to be a better representation and not be so distracting, right? When we're hyper-focused on something and we're working on a specific area, we might, be tempted to jack the number up all the way to the top, but we don't want to keep it that high, generally speaking. We want to find something in the middle. So I can collapse that layer, right, and continue working on the armor. I work on the mask channel here, right, and again, if my color is 1, it'll add. If it is 0, it'll subtract. So it's good to try painting in this way, right, to look for the negative space, because sometimes creating a nice shape in the negative space will help to highlight the shape that you want to appear in the positive space. So negative space cuts into an object, positive space kind of bulges out, or is the silhouette of the object, is normally how we think of it. Okay, so I can see some interference here when I brushed over. This might mean that it would be better to move over to the UVs, right, and to kind of like work from over here. Let's see. And that way it won't interfere so much with the helmet, right? And I can still concentrate on getting a nice smooth line here. It is struggling a bit in the center, which is because I was cheeky and I mirrored my object, right? So the UVs are mirrored as well. I get a nice line though. Double check it. Keep working around the edge to get the silhouette nice and clean. Maybe I've moved a bit too close in now. Maybe I need to swap back and be like, hey, I actually wanted to push this curve a little further out towards the arms. Just to follow the anatomy a little bit closer. And to highlight the width of his chest in the when looking at the entire silhouette, yeah. So you can see already, even though this character came in with no detail on the body area, I'm still able to achieve a lot through Substance Painter texture, especially using these height modifiers, right? I recently saw another really nice sculpt where they had all sorts of engravings and things on the outside, so I'll show you how to do that. I would actually create a new layer here, right? I could work on the one they already gave me, but let's just call it my height layer, or engraving then here I can see all of the different attributes that this material has, but all I want from it is the height, so I can push shapes into this character here. So I can just use the junky old brush, but that's not the way to do it. What you want to do is click on this alpha here and find a more interesting brush perhaps, or find a pattern, right? Like maybe you want to start to look for symbols that this character would be associated with, right? You could also do things like create these alpha channels in Photoshop and then bring them over, right, into Substance. And again, all I need to do now, once I have like some sort of objects of interest on this layer, right, is play with this. Oh, actually, can I collect the height setting right away? Should. Oh, here it is. It doesn't like that one either. So it looks like it's actually using the opacity of the brush. That was my fault because I did not use the masking method, right? So I think it might be better if I work on the mask. So let's go back to where it's empty. I can do a mesh fill to get everything. Right, so now everything should be white in this height layer. Oops. Let's mask it out. And then maybe if we paint something, mask layer, let's see. Brush, go back. Oh, you know what it was? It wasn't the fill that I needed. I could just decrease the opacity here. No, is that not what I was doing before? Slider along here somewhere. So it looks like it's just this value at the bottom affects each individual stamp. I wasn't actually able to have it change once I put it in there. So that might be something I need to investigate. What I might want though, right, is I think just like in Unity, right, I should be able to just drag a brush in here. Let me see if that's happy doing that. Yep. So if I want to do, say, a custom engraving here, like do more of a some sort of Viking or maybe some Celtic shapes, or some knots or something. I don't want to make it too goofy, right? I don't want to have like a mustache or anything in here. But I did this on my axe already, so maybe what I can do is pull that up. actually pulled this into my materials folder already. So I have an imprint here of the axe. Right, these are the designs I made for that for this particular character's axe. So what these will do is they will also stamp onto any new object that I create, right? So I can potentially, get that pattern not only on the weapon, but on the character as well. So let's see, this is the chest area here. If I go to my brush settings, we also have, I believe, the option of changing it to just stay the same size, right, in the viewport, and so that it's not trying to wrap around the object too much, right? When I move it across the object, it tries to change the brush size, and that can cause a bit of jitter. So test out these other options here, right? Maybe you want it aligned to the camera, or possibly to wrap around the object, or possibly just aligned with the UVs. I believe I can also rotate the canvas, by just holding Alt and left clicking. So if my stamp is, say, the wrong direction, it actually wants to rotate the stamp as well. That's odd. Maybe because I aligned to the UVs. Let's see. Alignment, planar. Interesting. Okay. So here's my angle. Let's see. If I change that to align with the armor. What I want to do here. Now I can't have it cross over the midpoint because it will. Is it not stamping now? Because if it does, it will reflect both ways. Actually, it's kind of pretty. Makes a bit of a Rorschach pattern. I'd also need to think about my layers, right? Like perhaps I would want to isolate certain objects. So let's see what we can do here. Not too bad. Right, obviously I don't want the stamps on his skin, so this is where I would go in with the mask and paint back in areas that I wanted to reveal, right? So in this case, I do want, all the chest areas. So I can use the brush and paint over the chest and over the areas that I want to be textured, right? Or I can use, again, the polygon fill, right, to really have a lot of control. Or I can be like, okay, I don't want any texture in those polys, right? All right, so for more detail work, like faces, you do need to get in there and spend a little more time, right? A little more effort. First off, you would want to, have a new layer for the face. Potentially having a different type of skin, right? I downloaded a whole bunch of skins, but I really don't use them all. I haven't really found a favorite yet. So what I could do, though, one interesting or creepy thing that I downloaded was this human face imprint. I do need to be careful because now my brush is set to have an alpha, which is my weird weapon, right? So you can download these kind of weird materials that are literally just a face, and then I would like resize this. I'd look for the face area on the model, and then proceed to have nightmares for the rest of the week, right? So it's a bit tricky. Let's see, alignment, cameras, view space, texture. I might have to paint out that top area. Oh, that's creepy. So generally I don't find this works very well, obviously. What I would end up doing, right, is to either start with a basic material or to just use a brush, right, and just to literally paint the face, rather than these monstrosities that they try to get you to download on the store, right? So right now I'm painting materials. I don't actually want to be painting material. Let's see. And the alpha for my brush is off. I wonder if I can reset this to default. I can create a preset, no. I forget what the name of the default circle is. Yeah, I can just find a replacement here. There we go, shape. So I might have better luck just painting in, you know, a color. So I'm gonna give them lips, you know, or rosy cheeks. This part, and I can also paint multiple colors. And he's definitely gonna have like glowy blue eyes. I don't want stuff here though, so this is again where I might need to create the black mask, right, and the alpha channel after the fact to refine this a little more, but it might be better to be working over here in the UV map. I haven't figured out how to turn off bits of the material yet to paint through it. Maybe that's something to look up on good old YouTube. But you can just get in here and paint, or really the way to do it, right, is to take this and export your textures, right? Let's just say that I'm happy with it as it is. Give it a file path. So I have my Viking folder that's containing everything right now. Just under my project. Got substance textures. And this is my low poly texture. Okay, I want to keep it in a separate folder. Oh gosh, that's a long file name. Check the size for the configuration as well. This part's important. You need to change it to whatever application or engine you're exporting to, right? Like Arnold AI Standard would be for Maya, Unity Standard, Metallic for a default Unity 3D, and then you have HDRP as well. Right, notice how many different channels the HDRP is outputting versus the standard metallic. So I have to downgrade I'm going to start my project over with a Unity standard, just because I found this really nice ocean shader that's going to help my animation look a lot cooler. So with these output maps, right, the standard metallic, I can then export. And then I have files that I can just edit in Photoshop, right? So now I would go back and do kind of the default UV editing or painting, right, like that we did prior, where you're literally just going to use your Photoshop skills, right, to make whatever you want for the face. So I'm definitely going to be using something similar to like Cable for a basis for this character's face. So maybe I'll even just grab like a bit of comic book reference, right? Like I had that character reference from my original Viking folder. So maybe I still have my reference inside here. I think it might actually be somewhere else. So let's open that up. All right, so now I have the option of painting this character. So let's go back and find those textures, right? Here's the diffuse texture. It's gonna look somewhat creepy, right? But these are all the colors here in Substance. Obviously, there are still gaps and issues and things that I need to work on. This is by no means final, but I should have probably filled it in those gaps. I can then, make some more decisions about the engraving. Maybe since I have Photoshop open, I'm going to spend more time drawing an engraving that will fit this shape, right? And then I can save out just that single file as an alpha channel stamp. In order to bring that into my project, right? Let's see if we can open it up. It is under algorithmic. I believe that's in your documents folder. Documents, algorithmic alphas, right? Is the there's the Show and Explorer. Is the place where you need to put those. So alphas, let's see. Oh, they're putting it in a SBAR type file, but I definitely just had it as a PNG, right, with an alpha channel. So I might need to, let's find where I put mine. So I called it engraving. Oh, shelf/alphas, okay. So documents, algorithmic, substance painter, /shelf/alphas. And then this is what my Photoshop file looked like, right? It was just literally painted on the UVs. So anything that I make in Photoshop, right, I can make a new file, or I could paint like directly on here, right? I would use a new layer, like paint some sort of design on here, right? And then I could isolate that layer. I could even just crop it down to this size. Make sure that it has no background showing, and then save it out as a PNG file. Then I can use that as a stamp in inside Substance. That would be useful for things like engravings or like this belt buckle that I need to do, right? Some of those details would come in nicely using that method. But for the face, right, I might want a little bit clearer view of where the geometry lies there. This is an older version, or let me pull up the right scene file. Actually, I'm using the FBX, so let's just make sure we're using the exact same model file. Grab the UV editor, Right, so there's my unwrap. I want to export this so I can see it, so I go to image, UV Snapshot, tell it to output at 2K, which is 2048 by 2048. Might have it export somewhere useful, so put it in the same folder here. It still needs a name, so low poly UVs. Keep it as a PNG map. Hit apply. Back to Photoshop and open up that folder. Drag that UVs into Photoshop, and now it is layered on top of here. If I change it to like a color burn or to multiply, right, I can see it a little bit clearer. And if I really want it to be clearer, still I can duplicate the layer sometimes. That helps to darken up this effect. Now I can see where the actual area that I have to paint on for the face lies, right? So I have this area here to do whatever I want with. I can save this, I would save this now as a PSD in the same folder. Oh geez, I would really shorten this name though. Viking low, right? So now I can still export new materials, right? New Substance Painter files with all of my Substance Painter stuff if I want to keep that. But then I also have a color file, right, that I can use to layer on top or to replace whatever Substance is doing, right? So for instance, since I have access to all of my Photoshop files, right, or all my Photoshop brushes and so on, and my color picker, and all the stuff, I could choose to, make additions to the face. So let's say I want to give them some bushy eyebrows. And more like, I don't know, like nostrils. I guess he needs some nostrils. Right? Maybe those nostrils are a bit dark, a bit aggressive. So then I would hide my UVs, right? I don't actually ever want them showing. And save that file. Open up the OG one from Substance, right? And then either just replace this one area by just like selecting the face area, right? If I wanted to be accurate about it, I could show my UVs. This might be necessary for a complicated unwrap. And use the polygon select here. So just grab the face. Right? Control C to copy. Go back to the Substance version. Paste special, paste in place, Shift Control V. Right? And then I get those new additions that I've made in my PSD onto my Substance Painter version, right? So spend some time in Substance. The nice thing about this part is that if you have done this right and you've exported your FBX, right, and that's going to be your final FBX for everything, you want to use that same FBX to export to Mixamo as you do to export to Substance Painter. That way you can still make additions or changes to your texture file while working on your rig, right? So really on this character I had to go back and make some additional cuts on him, and now he needs a new rig, right? So this was my final export, and I would take him through the process of Mixamo rigging. That would be something for the next next video.